I feel like a lot of people have a kind of like a path they want to follow when it comes to open guard. I think there's this thing in jiu-jitsu where people try to identify with a guard style. I don't think it's as prevalent anymore, but sometimes, especially in the older days, like people are like, oh, I'm a lasso player. Oh, I'm a deep half player. So while there are specialists, and that's a good thing, I think most of us will do better if we become generalists and just understand how to sweep from different spots. So just being able to understand like basic principles of like, okay, can I make a connection? Can I keep my feet in a position where I can destabilize you? And then can I put you on your hips or put you on your hands? If I can accomplish those tasks, I should be able to either submit you, take your back, or sweep you.
Welcome to Forever White Belt. I'm your host, Adolfo Ferranda. Today I'm joined by a true innovator in the Jiu Jitsu world, Nelson Puentes, the co founder of Inverted Gear and a third degree black belt who has spent years traveling the globe, training, teaching, and building community. Nelson and his wife Hillary launched Inverted Gear in 2012 with a mission to create high quality Jiu Jitsu gear that reflected both personality and performance. What started as a small brand with the Sleepy Panda logo has since become one of the most popular companies in the BJJ scene, known for its thoughtful design, ethical manufacturing, and strong connection to the jiu-jitsu lifestyle. But Nelson's journey goes far beyond the gi. He's also the head instructor at Inverted Gear Academy in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where he's built a culture rooted in play, accessibility, and deep conceptual learning. In this conversation, Nelson and I explore his early days in jiu-jitsu, his philosophy on teaching, how traveling shaped his approach to training, his love of German food, and the challenges and lessons that come with creating businesses from the ground up. And with that, I give you Nelson Puentes. Nelson, welcome to the show, man.
How's it going, Adolfo?
Good. Nelson, you are now correct me if I'm wrong, third degree black belt, correct?
Yes.
And brown belt in judo?
Brown belt in judo. I just stopped practicing judo formally when the rule change happened back in 2009.
Well, you are the co-founder of Inverted Gear Academy, Inverted Gear Company itself, with your wife Hillary, correct?
Yes.
And are you guys in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania?
So the academy is in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We ship everything out of Allentown. And the warehouse and the academy are about 2 miles apart. We are hoping to move by the end of the year and have them like closer together. And I live in like 10 minutes from there, a little town called Whitehall. But everything takes place here in the Lehigh Valley. I believe it's the third largest metropolitan area in Pennsylvania.
Nelson, where I discovered you was through Globetrotters myself. I'd heard of Inverted Gear, but I didn't know the people behind Inverted Gear. So I didn't know that story whatsoever. I actually stumbled upon I believe it was a Choi Bar video.
Yeah, that was one of the first publicly available Choi bar instructionals. So it got a ton of views.
What else really struck me too was that you're not the smallest guy in the world. And the people that I saw doing Choi bars early on were these tiny, very agile guys that were doing this. Not that you're not agile. It was interesting to see someone like you. And I'm like, oh, okay, what can I get from this? You know, like my personal bias. But then I was like, wow, this guy really is a very good instructor. Obviously, if he's instructing with the Globetrotters, he's got to have some talent here. And I really was struck by that. And what was funny was that after I spoke to you about it briefly, you said you don't even do it that way anymore, or you've added on to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so let's backtrack a little bit. The Choi bar as a big guy, it's very good because one, you can't get stacked, and two, you can't get picked up, which are considerations when you grapple giant humans. So that's what kind of attracted me to it. I trying to remember what year it was. I went to a Craig Jones seminar. He was one of the local gyms here, and he did leg locks, for an hour and 45 minutes, and then he kind of had like 15 minutes left, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been doing this one armbar," and like showed it kind of like as an afterthought, and As good as Craig was at leg locks and everything he showed was amazing, but like that's the one thing, people call like the $100 move. I pay $100 to go to the seminar. That's the one thing that kind of stuck to my game was that those last 15 minutes that he was like, oh yeah, I do this thing. And I've got to pick the brain of a lot of people that do it. I flew to Florida when Lackland did that little Florida tour a few years ago, and then he did like 2 hours of Choi bars. And I got to kind of like bounce ideas off him and just ask questions like, hey, like, I'm kind of getting stuck here. And then he said, oh yeah, like your legs in half guard, they can cut off your angle. So now even if I'm in half guard, I can initiate the Choi bar. I make sure like I free my bottom leg. So I'm like sideways open guard, or what Preet likes to call rotisserie chicken position.
That's funny. I find it a lot from like a clamp guard, side guard kind of situation
Yeah, for
as
sure.
well, where I start there a lot too. What I like too is that you bring up anatomical differences, right? In terms of like a big guy, you're not going to get stacked and you're not going to get stood up kind of thing. So you do, it's nice that you're mentioning those things as a reality, because sometimes coaches are a bit sort of like single-minded in that type of mindset, like this should work, right?
I mean, that's one of the reasons that Jiu-Jitsu is like chess analogy starts to fall apart because we're not playing with the same pieces. And there's times like it feels like the other guy has more pieces than you do. Like, maybe he has more knowledge, he's bigger, he's faster, he's a higher belt, whatever. We're not playing with the same pieces. So it's important that we take anatomical differences into consideration. And then I think that's one of the great things that ecological, to open a can of worms, like the eco and CLA camp has brought forward is like, hey, it shouldn't look the same because we have completely different body shapes.
Now let's touch on that a bit, but let's backtrack a little bit. Pre-CLA Nelson, I seem to remember like hearing that you're traditional wrestler, kind of football player guy. Then you get into jujitsu and the type of stuff you're doing. You go to Alliance and you train with all these different types of people. And I'm thinking you're probably learning and training in sort of a modern way of that time, but also one foot in tradition as well, or whatever you want to call that, traditional jujitsu. And you're effective. You're a highly effective jujitsu player. So what made you cross the line? Well, just can you backtrack and tell us a little bit about like your jujitsu evolution?
Yes, I mean, I wrestled for 2 years, so I was not a very good wrestler. I think I finished like 500 my senior year. Like I did make it out of the district in New Jersey, made it into the region. I believe I was 2 matches away from making it into the state championship. So I was nowhere near state final. So let me rephrase that. But I loved wrestling. My high school coach talked me out of wrestling in college. I got like 2 offers for like small D3 schools in New Jersey, and he's like, "Look, you're a smart kid. Just get your degree. You don't need to wrestle. Like you did really well your senior year, but when you wrestle in college, like the competition is different. Like this guys have been working on this for 10, 15 years. You've been working on wrestling for 2 years." And I was like, okay, like listen to him. I got really into Olympic weightlifting. I played rugby, but something was missing. I really miss being on the mat. My buddy Dave called me one day. He's like, hey, there's a jiu-jitsu tournament. We should sign up for it. So I signed up for a jiu-jitsu tournament before ever taking a class formally. 4 weeks out, signed up for a Grapples Quest, white belt division, bounced around like 2, 3 gyms, found a place that worked, trained, took third place. My buddy won his division, and then just became obsessed. And I got my black belt in 6.5 years.
And you've done a lot of cross training too. You've been, I hear 10th Planet, I hear all kinds of stuff, even
Yeah, I mean,
traditional sort of Gracie stuff. And
yeah. So I trained like, a Gracie affiliate, and I was training at a judo gym. There was like a brown belt in jiu-jitsu that would teach jiu-jitsu. It was kind of like my base for a bit. Then I was like, okay, I want to do more jiu-jitsu. I went to like a more traditional Gracie gym on the Hoyler lineage, RGDA. And then I just like the traditional stuff didn't work out for me. Went to a different gym. I trained with like an MMA gym. Eventually found Alliance, and then around this time I was a purple belt, and then the Alliance affiliate in New Jersey was like very small. So I started teaching a few classes. Then somebody opened a gym in the town where I lived, and then came over to the gym I was training at. He's like, hey, like we opened a gym. as a head instructor, he'd be interested in teaching there a few times a week. And then he's like, look, I have, his name is Kevin Sheridan. He's like, I have a business outside the school. I'm barely in my own gym, but talk to Nelson. He's like my right-hand man and he lives in the town. So I'm sure you can work something out. So I started teaching jiu-jitsu as a purple belt. So while being part of Alliance and like, going to New York and taking classes as much as I could, I was coming back home and then teaching at night. And I ended up taking a lot of ownership over my own training because I kind of like a lot of my time was like self-directed. And I was kind of figuring out as we went along, like my white belts were like, hey, can we learn spider guard? I was like, okay, like I know 2 sweeps from spider guard, so let me figure some stuff out. So I would funnel myself into that position. I would like pull guard. Okay, let me place my spider guard as possible. Almost like putting constraints on myself so I could figure out what to teach. So this didn't click until years later that I was kind of like a lot of my learning was by playing games while we were rolling. Like, the lower belts I was training with, I didn't have that many training partners at rank. So a lot of my training was like lighter, smaller guys. So I was just constrain myself. It's like, okay, like, I want to teach spider guard next week, so I'm only going to play spider guard today. Or I want to teach butterfly next week. I'm going to do everything I can to like funnel this game into spider or butterfly or pressure passing or whatever, close guard. So a lot of my development was by being like self-directed, like looking stuff up online, grainy YouTube videos at the time or DVDs, or I'm old enough to that generation that had like the bootleg VHS tapes of Brasileiros and like the World Championships from Brazil, and just figuring stuff out by watching matches.
Well, your timing seems perfect in jiu-jitsu in a way, just in terms of like seeing all the evolution that you've witnessed when you got in, when you started these businesses. Granted, it's incredible amount of work that you have to do, but don't you feel like your timing was sort of perfect in all these regards?
Yeah, I mean, I have this memory of being a white belt and being at school, and my buddy Mike, he's a black belt now. He runs his own school. Shout out to Sapo. He, as instructor, he was a purple belt at the time. He's like, hey, I just watched Abu Dhabi over the weekend. Like he actually like went to the tournament. It was in New Jersey in 2007, like right around the time I started training. And he's like, this Marcelo Garcia guy was sweeping everybody with this thing. I think he calls it X guard. Can you show me X guard? And the instructor is going like, no, we don't do that here. Hoyler didn't teach us that, so we don't do that. And I remember like as a white belt being like, man, I don't like that. And I remember having this conversation with my wrestling coach in high school. Asking him, was like, what was the toughest thing about being a wrestling coach? And he was very high level. Like he was a state finalist in high school. He wrestled in college. He like competed internationally for the U.S. His name is Jim Miller. And the thing he told me was the hardest thing of being a wrestling coach at the high school level was you had to stay on top of all the new developments in wrestling. So you had to either go to clinics or watch tape and like really understand what was happening, like what was being taught and like what techniques were being like used. And I was like, man, that's cool. That's really cool that you're always learning something new. So when I saw a coach of a different sport just having like that traditional, like, no, we don't do that, I was like, oh man, I don't like that. I like how Coach Miller did it. So I've been training for almost 20 years now. I've been coaching since 2009, 16 years. I'm just staying on top of the meta, just seeing what's being like, how are things being taught, what's being taught, how are things changing? And I tell my students all the time, like, I was there when like deep half guard became a thing. I was there when 50-50 became a thing. I was there when like the Brimbola started. And then I'm seeing like how things come in and out of bug, or I was laughing like one of my students like, oh yeah, like the new meta is like takedowns and pressure passing. I was like, dude, I've been doing that since 2007. I don't know how it's new, but that's cool.
Wow, guess that was really interesting. But did you know throughout history, salt has been highly valued and commonly used as currency? Warriors and sailors were sometimes given rations of salt for their wages. If they were worthy, they were said to have earned their salt. Salt Electrolytes drink mix is designed for today's warriors, athletes, and those who get after it and work up a sweat regularly. If you're eating healthy, drinking plenty of water, and working out, you need to replenish your electrolytes. With a light, refreshing flavor, salt is great to drink during your workout because it will not coat your mouth with a thick film. Salt contains 6 different electrolytes, with a touch of iodine to help maintain a healthy thyroid. No sugar, no color, no BS. Go earn your salt. And on top of that, if you use code FWB, how much should we give you off? 5%? 10%? Nah, 15%, just because we're friends. Now go get it. Salt electrolytes. That's cool. So you've seen these cycle around, but what I also find interesting is that you've always had this kind of beginner's mind. It sounds like you've always tried these different things. And I remember hearing you early on, and I can empathize with this, saying things like English being a second language early on in childhood, and you having to learn these things and maybe not looking like you're the guy initially, right? Or sounding like you're the guy initially, and having to sort of just plow through all these different experiences to just get to the next level, whether it's language, challenges with ADD, your own jujitsu game, business, whatever it may be, right?
Like you, man, you did your background on me. Yeah. So I've ADHD. I was diagnosed when I was little, which is very rare South America at the time. You kind of just thought you were a bad kid, but my mom fought for me to see a therapist. I got diagnosed. Props to her because she fought for me not to be medicated. Like they wanted to medicate me. At the time it was like Ritalin, I guess. I
Yeah, it
guess
was the
like it was,
norm too. So that's
it was like
amazing that she didn't
yeah,
allow that to happen.
because I went to like Chile at the time was still very traditional. Like you still wore your uniform. You had like a blazer, a shirt, a tie. You had to wear to school every day. And you sat in a room and the teachers rotated. So you kind of sat in a room for 2 hours at a time. Or I think it was 45-minute periods, two of them. Then you had a recess and go back in. So as an ADHD child, it was not like, schooling was not easy. But when I found jujitsu and I got to learn while moving, it was kind of like, oh my God, like this hits all the right buttons on my ADHD brain. And I just went on this, I don't know, 15-year long ADHD hyperfocus where like all I wanted to talk about, all I wanted to do, all I wanted to think about was jujitsu. And I was training twice a day. If I was not training, I was watching matches. If I was not watching matches, I was reading blogs. And somewhere in between, I was fitting my, schooling. I was going to college at the time before I dropped out to start a geek company with funny pandas on it.
You were studying like engineering and stuff, right?
So I started with physics and engineering, and then I got to calculus 3, and I was like, I don't think I can do this. And then I switched over to, I wanted to get a kinesiology degree and be a strength conditioning coach. So I was doing like this school, I was exercise science degree. Then I transferred colleges and like didn't have an exercise science degree, but it was like a physical education major with a focus on adult fitness. And then I ended up taking a year off to save money so I could pay through. I was paying my way through it. My parents were helping me, and I took the year off, save I think it was like $10,000, and I put all that money into buying geese from Pakistan. And then that's how the company started. And I never went back to school because it worked out.
Yeah, amazing. One thing I want to get back on too, and because I share the ADD, what I find is as soon as you do jujitsu, at least for me, the chaos of it was I felt right at home. Right. I was like, oh, okay, this is my lane. I can relate to all of this. But then when I started hearing the name, and I don't mean to shit on him or anything like that, Danaher, right? And you have these instructionals, long, verbose, very intelligent. You tell almost like, collegiate professor like lectures. And I would just tune out very quickly. And then I would follow other coaches and type of instructionals that resonated a lot more, that are much more sort of succinct and to the point. Do you resonate with that?
Yes, I have never been able to sit through a Danaher DVD. I really like the way Lackland breaks his stuff down on his instructionals and on submeta, where it's kind of like here's the position. This is what we're looking for. These are the problems you run into. These are the main things you're looking for. Like that's kind of like all I need, and then I want to just experiment with it. And then if I have, and then like I can refer back when people start just talking about is like, hey, your hand has to go here. This is optimal. That's when I tune out because like we talked about, like I understand, like everybody's different. And I got to train with Lucas Lepri a lot when he was in New York, and then he moved to Atlanta before he opened his academy. And I would go to Atlanta for alliance camps before worlds or pans. One of the things is like kind of special about Lucas. He's probably the best jiu-jitsu guy I ever trained with, and two, he is such a good instructor. And while he teaches the traditional way, like, technique wise, but a lot of times he's really good about communicating his intent and why he's doing these things instead of just showing it's like, do it this way. He's like, hey, like, we're going to go here. I'm going to put my hand here because I don't want this to happen. This is what my weight is going because I don't want this to happen. And then this is like the sequences. And then he's so good at anytime you roll with Lucas, you can ask him about like any exchange in the 10-minute roll you just had with him. Like, he will break it down to an amazing detail. And he's like exceptional that way. The only other person I know like that is John Thomas. John Thomas is so good about breaking down exchanges or your game or other people's games he's studying. So that is something that I've tried to emulate when I became a coach.
So when you go through this, and one thing that I noticed that really brought I don't know, sort of validated the ecological approach to me more so was when all of these Globetrotter coaches started really embracing it, right? It's almost like almost everyone is sort of CLA in Globetrotters. It feels like not everyone, but a lot of them that I know. And suddenly I started hearing you talk about it more, and then we're all in. We're all in CLA and all this stuff at your academy and the way that you're coaching. What was that threshold for you? Where did you cross over? What was that line?
We were running games only with the kids for a long time. And I don't want to call it ecological or CLA. We're playing games. So then we had a fundamentals class that was all drilling, and then we had we called it intermediate, and then that was game space, and then we had the advanced class, which was a mix of games and like old school instruction. And we kept running into this problem that people would get stuck in the fundamentals drilling only class because they were really good at drilling, but whenever there was resistance, they couldn't do things, and they didn't like that. So then we're like, okay, like maybe it's a marketing problem. So we changed the name of the intermediate class to Fundamentals 2. And I was able to trick a few of them, but then they reverted back to only showing up on the drill only days. So the other thing that happened throughout my years of coaching was people having trouble, like very common is like being held down in side control, being held down in mount. And just telling me, hey, like I can drill the escape all day, but I can't do it when there's resistance. And my solution was always like, okay, like let's play some games from there. And then every time you start a round the next week, I want you to start from the position you're having trouble with. So if you went to a tournament and you got mounted 2 matches in a row and you couldn't get out, the entire next week you were starting every round mounted. And lo and behold, people got better because they got to work from there with resistance and eventually figure it out. So eventually, when I started reading more about CLA, the Rob Gray books, listening to Souders, listening Preet poking me about it, asking Preet questions, asking Francesco questions, when I realized it's like I was running 2 classes. One class was I'm gonna make you really good about doing this without resistance, and then there was a second class that was entirely dedicated to making you be able to do the things that you know how to do, but with resistance now. So we decided to just take the one step out and then do everything with resistance from the beginning. And then we started doing game based all the time. Like everything has resistance. And like I no longer have students that like raise their hand and say, oh, like I know how to do it, but I can't do it without resistance. Or I know the move, but like it's not working. So now we workshop through it. Like, have you tried this? Are like, are you paying attention to certain things? Blah, blah, blah. We spend more time on it. And now my white belts and blue belts right now, because we've been into this almost 2 years now, are the best white belts and blue belts I ever had. And my purple belts and brown belts have made great strides. Everybody is just reacting better, reading. Everybody has stand up now. Nobody's afraid of standing because we get to like learn. We play all these games, so they're so much more comfortable in the standing positions. Everybody bottom escapes are so much better. Guard passing is better. We're doing a big, almost like a boot camp of leg locks, because we've been kind of ignoring it for the last 3 years. So we've been doing a lot of CLA games for leg locks lately.
Was it the like Francesco Fonte and those people that sort of pushed you over the edge? You had an effective teaching and academy and curriculum and all that.
But I'm one of those people that I am, what's the best way to say this? I hate when people do something just because that's the way it's been done before. So even when we started the academy and I was teaching the traditional way, we were not doing like a traditional jiu-jitsu warm-up. I was not teaching like a big arch and hip scape, like typical like Gracie side control scape. I am very comfortable killing sacred cows when it comes to jiu-jitsu. right? One of my old students, he trained with me from white to purple and then moved away, opened his own academy in New Jersey. And then he was like no gi only and went deep into this. So he started like asking me, hey, have you seen this guy Greg Sodders? Have you tried playing games? I was like, oh, like we're playing games all the time. And then he's like, oh yeah, but like, are you doing eco? Are you doing CLA? And I was like, I'm not sure I know what you're saying. And then he like sent me stuff, and then I would read it. I was like, okay, like I'll try it, and then we'll try it with the kids, try it like in the game class. But it's always like, as some people like call it hybrid, right? Like we're still doing the old school stuff, and then we went in some games. Eventually, he came to my academy every December for the gym anniversary. We do like a weekend camp, and then I just have a bunch of black belts visit, and all my friends teach classes. Everybody teaches an hour. Then we have like this big open mats, and it's a lot of fun. So he came over and he did an eco class, and then that was like the first time I was like actually exposed to a full class of somebody teaching this style, and I was like, man, that's really cool. And around this time is when Francesco and Preet announced that they were going to have that eco versus the world camp in Florence. So I was like, okay, like the tides, like these two people I really respect are pushing for this thing. I got to hang out. Pre comes to the camp we do in Mexico, so around that time I got to hang out with Pre. Like he came, he taught our school. It was all like CLA eco. I got to spend a week in Mexico just picking his brain about it. So I was like, okay, you know what, like let's do it. Like I talked to all my students. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about, you guys been playing some games, we've done some of it before. Are you guys okay if we try this for a year? If we don't like it, we can go back, but we have to give it at least a year. And we did it a year, and like nobody wants to go back to the old way. Like everybody that was there from the beginning feels they've gotten better. Everybody has seen how much faster white belts are progressing, how much faster they're progressing. So like I have my guys, like quote unquote competition team, like the guys that like to compete at my gym. They'll doing like Jiu Jitsu World Leagues, gi, no gi. They compete in IBJJF. They jump in judo tournaments. Some of them are jumping on folk style, like adult wrestling tournaments, and like they compete in folk style wrestling. And all like there's no special training. It's just they just come in and do the games, and like they're learning all these skills that are hard to develop. But if you play like if you play enough games, they put the time on it, you get better at them.
Has it made you like rethink your promoting thresholds now that everyone is improving so much? And what is your criteria anyways?
Man, so I had this one lady come in, and then she had been training Aikido for like 10 years. And I told her, I was like, hey, like, so I know you come from like a more traditional martial arts background, and you guys don't spar. Everything I told her, like this, it was kind of early on. I was like, hey, like 6 months ago, like we changed the way we teach entirely, and everything's gonna be game based. Everything you do today is gonna have resistance. And she was like, what do you mean? Like, how long have you been teaching martial arts? I was like, 15 years. And then now she's like, you just threw all that away and changed the way you teach from 6 months ago? I was like, yeah. And she's just like not happy about it. And then towards the end of class, she's like, okay, like, so is there a certain number of techniques I need to know to get promoted? I was like, no, we don't do that. It's all gonna be like my kind of like the threshold of like how are you progressing, how are you adapting, do you understand these basic positions, because it will change the games around, but it's kind of the same curriculum of with fundamentals class is always games of guard versus standing or passing versus guard, so up and down. And then we'll put the games will have an emphasis on the bottom player one week, top player the following week, and then we just change around the positions of like very simple. I stole this from Chris Payne's. And most guard, like we can define all guards are by where are our feet. Our feet on the inside. We have all the inside positions guard being butterfly if you're on your knees, or if you're standing, be all the X guards. Our feet on the outside, close guard in the bottom. If you're standing, the La Jiva. One in, one out, half guard in the bottom, sit up guard on the top. And then it's kind of like how is like very easy way to break things down. And so we just keep rotating through that. And then there's a certain number of positions that we like to visit and revisit when it comes to games. We work on submissions. So, for example, triangles. Like we can play it from guard, we can play it from the back, we can play it from top. But it's all the same games. We just change our body positions. How do we get that diamond shape? So like before we have the triangle or ankles across, it's not really a triangle yet. We have to figure four legs. So can we get into the precursor? Can we get into the diamond shape from those positions? Okay. Now can we get can we get a strangle? Can we get a choke out of it? Can we cross, can we figure four legs? Can we keep the arm and the shoulder as tight together as possible so we can take the space out and create a choke around both carotids? Cool. Can we attack the arm that's isolated? And they kind of applying those same principles to other positions. We'll do the same with like arm triangles. We'll talk about arm bars and cycling through constantly. We do like front headlock or from the back. This week we'll work with the lapel. This week we'll work without the lapel. I'm a cranky old man, so all our fundamental classes are with the gi on.
What makes, in your mind, like a great and a good student?
Somebody's willing to ask questions and you just put the work in. So there's a lot of people that tell you that really they want to be good at jiu-jitsu, but it's not a lot of people that will show up day in and day out and put the work in required to do that. I think that and just putting ownership into their own learning. So at the beginning, I think like white belt, blue belt, you just do what you're told is going to get you very far. But after purple belt, you should start asking questions and kind of like figuring out where you want your game to go and what works for you. I stole this from Josh Bogle from the Jiu Jitsu company. So we have project-based learning. So every month, I ask people to pick something and work on it for 30 days. And if you're a white belt, guess what? Like brand new white belt is like, hey, come here. Let me show you how to escape mount. You're going to work on this for a month. Or side control. And then I'll let you have fun. But you got to like eat your vegetables at some point. I mentioned that I have a few guys I compete in judo and wrestling recently. So that was like, a month leading up to the tournament. That's what they did. They play like grip fighting games or single leg games or double leg games or foot sweeping games if they were doing the judo tournament. And everybody looked great because, they got to spend that extra time working on those skills.
Now, this is a very non-eco type of question, but what sort of technique are you known for or that you resonate with?
Oh, man, I have jiu-jitsu ADHD. Like, if you ask me this 6 months from now, it's going to be completely different.
Yeah, I should say currently. How about at present?
So I'll tell you this. I am a little guy at heart. So a lot of people will tell you they roll with me. Like especially in the bottom, I move around like a lightweight. And then when I'm passing, I'll use a lot of footwork and movement to set heavy passing. But once I get on top of you, I'm pretty damn heavy. I've been lifting a lot the last year, so I'm like 230 right now. I competed as super heavyweight last year. I took third at Worlds. I won American Nationals. I won like 2 Opens. So if you watch my matches, like a pull guard every match, I am very good at sweeping big boys. So I think my open guard, sweeping from open guard is probably my best skill.
What do you feel most of us are doing wrong when trying to sweep from open guard?
Good question. I feel like a lot of people have a kind of like a path they want to follow when it comes to open guard. I think there's this thing in jiu-jitsu where people try to identify with a guard style. I don't think it's as prevalent anymore, but sometimes, especially in the older days, like people are like, oh, I'm a lasso player. Oh, I'm a deep half player. So while there are specialists, and that's a good thing, I think most of us will do better if we become generalists and just understand how to sweep from different spots. So just being able to understand like basic principles of like, okay, can I make a connection? Can I keep my feet in a position where I can destabilize you? And then can I put you on your hips or put you on your hands? If I can accomplish those tasks, I should be able to either submit you, take your back, or sweep you. It's kind of like the 3 boxes. So most of the time, if you train in my academy, that's what, every time we play in guard games, we'll play it from different guard. And all I'm trying to teach you is like, hey, like this is how you destabilize people. This is how you like put them off balance and like either drop them backwards and sit on their hip. Mm-hmm. This is how you put them on their hand. And like once we get here, they're off balance and their hands are occupied or they're sitting on their hips. This is how we come up into a heavy pass. This is how we find a path to their back. This is how we can, if they post this way, this is how we attack their arms. This is when the points where we can triangle. These are the points where you can leg lock them. The big thing when you read all the CLA stuff and the ecological approach is perception action coupling. So I think a lot of people, they're not good at reading. And then they just kind of like just trying to hit the same sweep over and over, even though it's being defended, instead of reading what's available and going to that. So I think that's one of the things that this style of training, the game-based training, the CLA, whatever you want to call it, is you get really good about that perception and your timing, and then it comes down to timing. So I have a white belt who, by the time this podcast comes out, is going to be a blue belt. That is a nightmare to like local purple belts and black belts that come visit me because he takes everybody down. and like, he never wrestled until he started training jiu-jitsu a year ago. All right. And then we took him to a judo tournament, and he was taking down like judo yellow belts and judo green belts. We took him to our wrestling tournament. He was taking people down that wrestled 4 years in high school. So you can get very good by playing games. And like, we don't take that many falls. We don't have competition training or anything like that. Most of the members of my gym are older guys in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So I am very cognizant when I design practices of how many falls we're taking. So there's a lot of grip fighting. There's a lot of hand games. There's a lot of like, hey, like let's get into the single and pick the leg up. You don't have to finish. So I mean, it just works, man. It's people that fight against it just have not been exposed to it, I guess.
Just a reminder to please give us a 5-star review on Apple Music and Spotify, and become a VIP member for only 99 cents a month. Get ad-free episodes at anchor.fm/foreverwhitebelt/subscribe, and check us out on Instagram at Forever White Belt Show. Go buy your Forever White Belt swag at Teespring, teespring.com/forever-white-belt. Check us out on YouTube now at Forever White Belt. Finally, if you ever get to beautiful Northern California, please come roll with us at North Bay Jiu Jitsu in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. They're amazing instructors, and everyone there are great people. Mention the podcast and get 2 weeks free. You may have touched on it already, but can you give me, over the span of your career, an aha moments?
So I kind of like touched on it a little bit, where I realized like the reason I was able to get my black belt as fast as I did. I got my black belt in 6.5 years. And like, I was winning IBJJF tournaments, blue or purple or brown. And I was like pretty decent black belt by the time I got it, like, 7 years in. I was playing a lot of games and just working on things with resistance. Like, I hated drilling. Somebody with ADHD is like so boring. So I have friends who say, "Oh, you want to get together and like drill for 2 hours?" Like, no, I do not want to do that. Like, I'll get together with you and like we can like do like positional sparring and play games and like you roll as much as you want, but you're not gonna get me to drill for 2 hours.
Let's talk about the academy. Did you always know in the back of your head I want to open an academy?
Yes, that's the dream. That was the dream. And then for a while, I was like, oh, like
Since white belt or what?
I think so. I think when I found this, I was like, "Oh man, like this is really cool. Maybe I can do this one day." My father always had a job, and he always had like side hustles. Like, he's very entrepreneurial to this day. So it's kind of like, I always thought about businesses since I was little. So when I started training jiu-jitsu, I was like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, I just need a little spot, some bats, and then like I can like charge people this much money." I was like, "Oh, like I can make a decent living doing this." So it was always in the back of my head. There was a point where me and my wife tried it, and we were there for like 6 months, and it was kind of like too early in the arc of the gi company, where we're still in a growth phase of the company, and all our time and effort was going towards growing the gi company, which was paying the bills. So it was too much for us to like take the morning off to go teach morning classes, and then take the afternoon off to teach the kids, and then the adult class. So we put that on hold, and then that was around the time like we met Christian Grogert from Globetrotters, and then we were gonna start doing more camps. So we're like, okay, like if we want to travel and do camps and do all this stuff, it's really hard for us to like have a academy so early in the process right now. So we don't have kids, we don't have debt. If we don't travel now, it's never going to happen. So we kind of put the academy dream on ice. You just run the geek company from our laptops, from whatever Christian brought us to do camps. And then as we did camps, we met more people and we got more invitations to travel to cool places. So we were traveling. We did something like 25 countries in 3 years at one point, and then like all over the US as well. So the academy was put on hold. We had like this big travel thing. Then as we settled back down, and then like we had our first child, and then COVID happened, and then I was just not happy with the local training situation. Every academy has its own culture, its own grading requirements, curriculum. So there's academies like I really like the culture, but I didn't like the grading the grading requirements or the curriculum, or if I like the curriculum, I didn't like the culture of the academy. You always have to like, okay, like I like this about this place, but I don't like. So it never felt at home in my area. I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop complaining about it. And my friends had a space, and they offered it for me if I wanted to use it for warehousing for the Gi brand. And it was like, it's in the basement. I was like, oh, it's not gonna work for warehousing, but we can run a pretty nice gym out of here. And that was almost 4 years ago in the academy. We turned, it was an Olympic weightlifting gym. We had to get like 10,000 pounds of weights and platforms out of there, but we put the mats down, and then the gym's been open for 4 years, and I'm getting like the best training I ever had now.
Wow. Is it still like really fueling you? It sounds like it.
Yeah, like I think about it all day. I'm very invested in the academy. My current batch of guys are like, the quote unquote competition team, if you will. The guys like are really invested into it and like want to do jiu-jitsu, want to compete, want to run their own academies at one point, and doing a lot of mentoring. And it's cool. Like I have like, some like 20-year-old like jiu-jitsu nerds, like kind of remind me of myself at that age. And then they're asking me questions. Some of them are like, hey, can I have homework? So I'm like sending them matches from like, the 90s and like early 2000s. I was like, hey, watch this guy. Watch how he like knee cuts. Watch how he reacts when like this happens. And then we get to like talk about it and like workshop it when we're at the gym. I've had this upbringing where I've wrestled, I've done judo, I've done sambo, I competed in gi, I competed in no gi, I competed IBJJF, I competed submission only. So having like, kind of encouraging people to not only do gi jiu-jitsu, but like, develop all these other skills, and not only develop the skills, but like test them. It's like, hey, you say you want to get good at takedowns with the gi on. How about we sign up for a judo tournament? Like really work on it and then test it. Like see how you're doing, right? Like let's get you to fail faster, so we know what to fix.
It seems like you and Hillary put so much thought into everything that you do. Obviously, the academy would be part of that. What is the first month of that brand new white belt? I'm stepping into your academy. What can I expect? What am I experiencing?
So you're gonna come in, you're gonna fill a waiver. We're gonna get you a starter gi with a nice brand spanking new white belt. We're gonna show you how to put that thing on because most people have no idea how to tie their pants. And then you're gonna take a fundamentals class, and then I'm gonna give you my spiel about how we're gonna play games, and I'm gonna give you scenarios, and then I want you to do your best to solve these problems and to hold your questions until we're done with the game. One of the things we were nervous about when we started the whole game-based thing, eco thing, was like, what about new people? And then we, like, very early, we realized people are better about coming up with their own solutions than they are mimicking what you show them. Like every time you show a side control escape to a new guy, it's like, okay, like where did my hand go? Okay, here. Okay, okay. And then my foot was here, right? And then like, there's like this constant like, hey, am I doing this right? Instead of like, hey, here's the game. If you accomplish this, you're winning. It's like, okay, that's all I have to do? Yes. That's all you have to do for now. So, for example, like one of the very basic things we work on a lot of positions is like, hey, you're sideways right now. Stay sideways. Don't let them flatten you out. He gets you flat and holds you there, he wins. If you stay on your side, you win. Yeah, just going through the games. For example, this week we're working on like half guard mechanics of either rolling people over with like a knee lever style sweep. Just again, like that mechanic of like, okay, he's trying to hold you flat. I want you to pick up the shoulder off the ground. If you can pick up the shoulder off the ground, let's try to get an underhook on that side. Cool. Can you get there? Awesome. If you can't get there and he's really driving down because you're trying to come up, you can roll him over if you block their knee. Like, how should I block their knee? I was like, well, like, you can try these things. Cool. Play that game. Then, like, let's add like more variables to it. It's like, okay, let's start from knee shield now. So you have knee shield. This knee is stopping him from putting you back in that position we were in. He's trying to go chest to chest. Don't let him go chest to chest. As you work on that, can we trap his arm so you can try to roll him over again, or access his back and get chest to back? Oh, let me try that. And like, we had two new guys this week, and then like they got through all those things. Same thing, we played a bunch of armbar games from like Mount. Like all the brand new guys I've been training for like a week were able to accomplish all these things that look very complicated.
Were you guys, when you opened the academy, thinking about the customer experience in terms of like when they walk in the door, also like, you're going to change here, the bathroom should look like this, the mat's going to be like so, you know what I mean?
Yes. So one of the first things you're gonna see as soon as you go in the locker room, there's these big two posters over do's and don'ts. It's like, hey, like, don't stink. Like, wash yourself, wash your gear, trim your fingernails. If you're sick, you should go home right now. If you have open wounds, you should go home right now. And then like, hey, like when you roll with somebody, we're working together. We're not working against each other. If somebody doesn't want to roll with you, they don't have to give you a reason. If somebody wants to stop midway through the roll, they can. If somebody doesn't feel safe around you, they don't have to train with you. So there's a lot of like culture aspects to it, even like the way what music we're playing when we're at the gym. And I argue with some of my guys about this all the time. It's like, hey, like if you're in the fundamentals class and most of the advanced classes like lo-fi, it's just like lo-fi mellow music playing. Like I want the elevator music on. And then when we're sparring, like, like, I'll let the guys have a little more leeway there. But like, very cognizant. It's like, hey, like so and so kids is here. Like they should like, make sure you're playing the clean version of that song. Or like I have some guys like death metal. I was like, hey, like, do we need that right now? Like I can't we just like play some you can play some music, but like don't go crazy. So like stuff like that, just like making it welcoming because I've been training jujitsu since I was 20 years old. And I was too dumb to know different and be intimidated by people that have been training martial arts their whole life. But I'm like, also like when I started training, I was like 200 pounds already. I had wrestle, I had done judo, I played football, I did like all these things, right? Sometimes like, you have the example of like this like older female that's like 120 pounds. It's like a lot more intimidating to start something like late in life. You're like smaller stature, you're a woman, and then you want to work in this gym with like all these savages. For example, like I make all the like everybody has to wear rash guards. You just cover up, man. You just cover up. Less like nobody needs to see your chest hair.
Yeah.
Like let's make this like at least intimidating as possible so we can have more female members. Same thing like the guys. It's like, hey, like I tell them all the time. It's like whenever new guys come in, it's like you're here to help them get better as fast as possible. So we tell people all the time, it's like adopt a new white belt. Like if there's a guy that comes into the gym that's your size, that's your project. Like make that person as good as possible, as fast as possible. And then we're all gonna benefit from that because we're gonna have better training partners. One of my coaches told me a long time ago, it's like, hey, like, the better you make it white belts, they push your blue belts because the blue belts don't want to be getting sweat by the white belts. And then the blue belts get better, and then they push the purple belts because the purple belts don't want to get submitted by the blue belts, and then it goes up to the brown belts, and like it just keeps going up the chain. So since we started, like it's been like this big emphasis on like, hey, let's just make our white belts. Let's make the room. There's always like this. Then like when you're training mechanic, we always talk about the room. It's like, hey, let's just work on the room. Like let's if there's something that's lacking in the room, I'm like, hey, like we really gotta work on this. Is you guys are accepting sweeps too easily. You should not just like flop when somebody makes a sweep attempt. Like you need to like they need to wrestle you down, or like the concept of like never being flat, of forcing people to earn that. There's things like we're constantly just talking about it. And like now I have friends from Globetrotters or whatever that come visit, and then they just tell me, it's like, why are you guys so annoying? They do all that nonsense that you do. Like, it's so hard to keep them flat. It's so hard to keep them down when I score on them. It's so hard to do this to them. I'm like, I'm doing a good job. Like, like we're getting there.
Now, Nelson, you have so many damn things going on that it's crazy in this world of jujitsu. One of which I was really interested in is your seminars. You do a ton of seminars, and you've done quite a few. And I didn't even know about this, just my own naivete. The Globetrotters thing, okay, yeah, that's super interesting. But you've traveled a lot of different places. Can you talk about your seminar experience and how your seminar teaching has evolved? Because you have a compacted amount of time. I'm not sure if CLA is in your seminars, how you're incorporating that now.
I'm annoying now. I have fully drank the Kool-Aid, as some of my friends tell me. If you're gonna learn from me, it's gonna be CLA style.
What was it like before your seminar? Can you talk about your seminar arc?
I think the first time I taught a seminar was at a Globetrotters camp. Before that, it was only like, traditional teaching in front of whatever academy I was part of.
Were you nervous?
Hey, don't get nervous, man. I don't know. Like I've been teaching jujitsu for so long, and then at that time I was like a black belt already. I've been teaching for years. I really don't get nervous teaching. So Globetrotters camp, right? First Globetrotters camp in the U.S. First camp in the U.S. My wife and I were signed up as campers. I forget what happened. There was like a lot of stuff going on, and like 3 or 4 instructors like fell out like the week before camp. So Christian is like scrambling to figure out what's gonna happen with the schedule, this and that. So he's like apologizing on the group chat. So I sent them like a private message. I was like, "Hey Christian, my name is Nelson. I'm signed up with my wife Hillary. We're both black belts. We're gonna be there already. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know." And then he sent me an email and said, "Okay, you're an instructor now. Here's a refund. These are your teaching slots. Let me know what you're teaching." And I was like, cool. So I think leg locks, ankle locks mostly, if I remember correctly, and a bunch of like judo. Like my favorite judo for jujitsu stuff. We were like in New Hampshire at the time. And then Christian is like, hey, like everybody love your classes. Everybody like hanging out with you at Open Mat. Like, you roll really well. If you ever want to come to Europe, let me know. And like I think a week later, I was like, hey, can we go to Austria for the winter camp? And then he's like, sure, like, you guys are in, you have a room. And so we booked a flight and went to Copenhagen to visit him for like New Year's, and then went into Austria for the camp. And I was just teaching, like I would teach in front of class. I was like kind of like pick a theme and then just kind of like brain dump. It's like, hey, like, this I was teaching a lot of takedowns at the time. There's not a lot of guys teaching takedowns at Globetrotters. So I was like one of the like takedown guys. So like mostly with the jacket. I was like teach like, okay, like let's grip fight. Like, I want you to get into an asymmetrical position, show like a little like a few grip breaks. Is this how you will get a 2-on-1 from here? Okay, cool. And then like, okay, here are things we can do from the 2-on-1. I just take turns doing it. Now I sometimes I teach the same thing now, but I just make a game out of it and like explain as like, okay, this is what I mean when I talk about dominant grips. I have more hands on you than you have on me. Or if we have a symmetrical grip, let's say like righty versus righty, if my right hand is higher than your right hand and I can move you easier than you can move me, I have dominant grips. It's more likely that I can throw you than you can throw me. So I have a bunch of games that I've designed, or there's a lot of stuff I've stole from Shintaro Higashi. He lives in New York. Like we have him at the academy out once a year. He does a lot of like game-based stuff with his guys too. So I steal a lot of things from Shintaro, and like now my guys are like really good at like this like grid fighting stuff. So back then that's the way it would work. Eventually I did a bunch of camps in Europe, especially like that one. There's like this one year, I think it was like 2016. I think we did like 4 camps in one year. We did the Austria camp. We did an Italy camp that doesn't exist anymore. And then we did Copenhagen, and then we did the US camp again. And then, like, I met a bunch of like guys from Europe, and then they're like, hey, like, you want to come to Norway? You want to come to Italy? You want to come to this? You want to come to that? That's how the camp thing started. And then I just, like, I always had like some kind of like live component, or like, hey, like, these are common reactions, like play around with this kind of thing. But yeah, over the last year, I've switched completely into like, this is how I teach this position now. We were talking about the Choi bar earlier. Like one of the biggest aha moments I had was teaching that is I start that class when I teach it at camps. When we teach Choi bars now. When like white belts do an arm bar and then they're on the wrong arm, so their hips are facing the elbow pit. I start everybody from there. I was like, okay, start here. Start here. So like you're attached to this side of me. Try to armbar the other person. Other person try to clear your elbow. And then like the guys that know how to choi bar, they know like, okay, I gotta put my feet on the inside. I gotta get my hips like relative body position. Get my hips to face your elbow. And most guys that have experience with choi bars know how to get there. The rest of the room looks clueless. And then you're like, okay,
Wow. That sounds like a big ask.
yeah, it's a big ask. And then like it's kind of like the prestige at the end, because like that's the trick. Because by the end of class, we're gonna do the same thing and everybody gets it. So then we're gonna go like, okay, now instead of being there, like let's turn a little bit more sideways. Let's put our feet on the inside, like the choi bar position. Can you arm bar now? Everybody, like most of them start getting it. I say, okay, now let's pay attention to these things. Boom, we'll play with it. Okay, let's go back. Now let's rewind it. Like, how do we get there? And then like start going over entries, and then like always with resistance, and the guy trying to click his arm, or like either squash you or pull away. And then by the end of class, like everybody's like pretty damn good at those.
But your current seminars now, so outside of Globetrotters, you're doing like your own stuff too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the guys from Globetrotters. Theo Brad Wolfson runs his camp in Mexico, and then I went to it one time, and I fell in love with that area. So we do an inverted gear slash BJJ in Paradise camp. So we do that every year.
You have one in November, right?
We
Coming
have
up.
one in November coming up. You should come. So that's like the one thing that's like fixed in my schedule. I try to go to Chile like once a year. My friend Jonathan Ortega, he's in the south of Chile. He has a very big affiliation down there, and I've convinced him to do this eco thing. And I think there's like 56 affiliates that he has, and then like he's like slowly getting everyone to change over. But it was a lot of fun. So I got a lot of the South Americans working on this.
No kidding. Do you find that they're a little behind on or I shouldn't say behind, that they haven't adopted the CLA approach quite yet?
It has changed rapidly. One of the things that happened in South America is a lot of like the really good Brazilian champions and instructors went where the money was. So they went to the US, they went to Canada, they went to Australia, they went to Europe. So like not a lot of them were like Chile has like probably one of the strongest economies in South America, but it's not as strong as Australia or Europe or the US. So like if you're a world champion want to make money, you're not gonna stay in South America. So like when my wife and I started going back to Chile in 2014, so like over 10 years ago, I think there were 10 black belts in the country. And a lot of them were like very old school guys that train like with the Gracies in Brazil or Gracie Baja affiliates of some kind. And then it was like Jonathan's guys, and then Jonathan is on there's like a few guys that were under like Cicero Costa, and there was like a few guys that were on their Aries. So those guys are like eventually like people start getting graduated, like splintering, more academies have opened. There's some very high level jiu-jitsu in Chile now. Like I was in Cordillera Jiu Jitsu there in Santiago, and they just had a bunch of people medal at the Brazilian Nationals not too long ago, right? Like that was like a few weeks ago. So you've seen a lot of those guys compete like anything. Like it's hard for them to get all the way to the U.S. So not you don't see a lot of Chilean competitors come to the U.S. They can't afford it. Same thing is like I was in Poland last summer, and as a big guy, we are lucky that those Polish dudes can make it here. There's so many like big technical black belts in Poland. They just like because of the way the salaries are, the conversion rate, and then like just the logistics of like flying all the way from Eastern Europe into Vegas to compete at one of the stages like so expensive for them. But like the level in Poland is like we see Warsinski now, but like like what like, just like Adam Warsinski, there's a lot of dudes like built like bigger than Adam, just like freaking tanks, super technical, super tough, just terrorizing smaller French people when they go like the European tournaments.
That's like a perspective you don't get very much. I was going to say too about South America and all the world champions moving away. It's not necessary to be a world champion to be an amazing coach. So to produce incredible competitors or jujitsu practitioners, or do you not agree with that?
So there's very rare people that are both an amazing competitor and a great coach. Like Lucas Lepri I mentioned before, he's like a rare exception. I've taken seminars by some
Right,
world champions,
Cobrinha, yeah, Mendez
and
brothers, yeah,
I mean, like I want to say, like those guys actually, Cobrinha is tough. The amount of work volume that he can handle, he thinks everyone needs to train that way. So I remember going to a training camp that he was running, and I wanted to die. Like in between training sessions, I wanted somebody to kill me because I was just like on a couch,
yeah. It's
just
too
enough
much.
energy,
Yeah.
just enough energy to like chew some food and then take a nap before I had to go get beat up by Cobrinha again. But there's like world champions that are so good and have been doing it for so long, they cannot verbalize what they just did. So you roll with them, they do something, it's like, how do you do that? They're like, oh, I do it like this. I was like, yeah, but can you show me? He's like, it's a thing I do. And you're like, okay, I understand. Show me the thing.
So you're so immersed in jujitsu. We're talking about the academy, your inverted gear business, the seminars, the inverted gear seminars, competing. I mean, I can go on, Globetrotters. Your whole world is, I shouldn't say your whole world, but a lot of it is encompassed in jujitsu. Is there a point where you're just like the person that works in the donut shop forever and the last thing you want to eat is donuts? Do you get to that point?
So I haven't reached that point, but there's like so many things when it comes to jujitsu. So there's periods where I'll be like, okay, like I'm really gonna go into the school and like try to like grow my students as much as possible. Or there's been times where like, hey, like like this season or like the next year or 2 years or whatever, I'm really gonna work on the gear aspect of the business. Or like last year I had a big competition year and I competed 4 times and like I had the best results of my career. And I was kind of like was a little bit more selfish with my time, and I was like, hey, like I have this big tournament coming up. I usually when I roll with my guys, I let them work and like kind of guide them through the role, whatever. But when I had these tournaments last year, my upper belts, I was like, hey, I'm sorry for what's about to happen to you, but I'm gonna beat you up right now. And I was like, I need you to be, I need you to like try to do this, and I'm not gonna let you do this. And that's kind of like how it goes. So I we talked about ADHD before. I have jujitsu ADHD, so I'm always changing what I'm working on, so like never gets stale. So I was talking to a friend that he's come to my gym a few times, and the last time he was at my gym was like 2 years ago, and he showed like this passing system he's been working on, and he showed that, and it was like really cool. And then he came back 2 years later, and I was, oh, like, you want to show something? What have you been working on? Oh, he's like, oh, you know what I work on? I've been working on that thing for 2 years. And I was like, you don't get bored? Like I can't, like, I couldn't understand it. Same thing when I hang out with John Thomas. Like John Thomas has been optimizing his Toriando passing since I've known him. And I've known the kid for like almost 12 years now. Used to, like, every time I see him like have some free time on the mat and he starts drilling, he's like drilling Toriandos and like trying like different grips. And I was like, man, like I'm not built that way. I can't, like, I can do that maybe for 3 months, then I need to move on. It's kind of like part of my life, like, the jujitsu lifestyle. I just like going into the gym. I like, the community. I like just talking to people. I like training. And you were like mentioning like how, like, how you get all these seminars. It's like I reach a fairly high level of jujitsu at the right time. I can speak English fairly well. I can articulate and I can put a lesson plan together. And I don't have a big head. I can just go, show up, teach, go have a beer with you afterwards and not be weird. And don't give you a philosophy lesson afterwards, and somehow people just the community miss that, like that's what people are looking for. So that's why I get like invited places to teach. Same thing now. It's just kind of like when I do these trips, it's kind of like a hard reset because I get out of my day to day and I get to just travel and sightsee and interact with a new jiu-jitsu community. And then there's like things that I have instill on my students that I feel are very relevant to the current meta or how we teach jiu-jitsu or how the way beginners should behave, that I go to academies, like it's like they don't have that at all. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna make you so much better over the next 2 3 hours. Oh, that is something that I really enjoy, like to this day, that I get to use, kind of like step in. And that, like, I have my academy, like the things I teach at the academy, and we have like a set curriculum. I get to think about the curriculum and change it up here and there. And then when I travel, I get to just roll and like see what's going on in the academy and be like, oh, like there's this thing we've been working on over there. Like I know I have a bunch of things that we can do to like make you better at this particular skill. Whether it's like leg locks or stand-in or bottom scapes, like,
Now, you're running multiple businesses, which is mind blowing, and you're a family man, a husband, business partner. You've had to learn all of this stuff and become adept at all of this stuff, whether it's running an academy, which involves plumbing, marketing, human interaction, dealing with parents, dealing with other adults, dynamics, things not working. And then the logistics alone, your manufacturing and the gear company, the whatever it may be, permits and whatever, man, and seminars, travel agencies, and setting up all of these things. I mean, that's just a dearth of stuff. And I've left a ton of stuff off the table there that you've had to, and Hillary's, plow through to just learn all this stuff and to be sort of a white belt through all of this stuff and to get where you're at. And I imagine, as you just sort of articulated, that kind of constantly adapting, right? And trying to improve. And it sounds like you're pretty, I don't know, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, comfortable doing that. I seem to recall you having a conversation quite some time about, I think it was your sister who was a bit more introverted and had more difficult time than you with, trying to perfect her English or something. And that's the type of person I was also. And so it was more of a struggle to sort of get in this later stage of life now where you kind of give less of a shit about other people's opinions, but you just seem to plow through and stumble upon all these things. So, permitting, city council, or whatever you may need to get through all these things. That world, what comes to mind when I bring up all this stuff?
So funny story. I love that you know that story about my sister. For the record, she probably watched this. She speaks better English than I do. She's a physical therapist and a college professor now.
Wow.
And even though, like, as an immigrant, when you have kids and they're native speakers, no matter how successful you are and how well you speak, they will correct you. And my kids are at the age they have started correcting my English all the time. I like the other day, it's like I said, hey, we need like a card. And then my son is like, you're saying card, Papa. You gotta pronounce the D at the end. Do it with me. And I'm like, listen, guy. So funny story. So when we opened in Gear, like the website went up, we're taking pre-orders. Very first order that went through the website was to New Zealand. I had no idea how international shipping worked. Right. So like that, like it's kind of like how like if you stumble into running an online business, it's like you're gonna like find this stuff out. Same thing where like when the shipment came in, it's like, hey, like you have the customs release. I was like, huh? Customs release? I was like, yeah, like you gotta file this paperwork so we can give you the geese. And if we don't have this soon, you're gonna get fined $5,000 or something. And I was like, yeah, so like panic, 25-year-old Nelson trying to find a customs broker to file the paperwork for him, blah blah. So as a business owner, you kind of just run into these things. And it's just when I like now, as somebody that's been running his own business for how long have I been running my own business now? Like 13 years. When like people are like, oh, can I ask you some business questions? I was like, that's very vague. Like what are we talking? Like we're talking marketing, we're taking chain of supply, we're talking management. Like where is this going? Right? Because when you are starting your arc as a business person, you don't understand there's like so many things that are involved here. Like, you're managing people, you're dealing with chain of supply. If we have like the commerce side, you're dealing with the website, you're dealing with marketing. Remember like the first time I saw the back end of like Facebook marketing, I was like, what am I looking at? Like I know this, like there's like all these numbers and like letters. You have no idea what these letters mean. So going back, like white belt mindset is like, if you look behind me, this is my home office. There's books all over this house, and some of them are on marketing, some of them are on management, some of them are on chain of supply. And even though I dropped out of college at this point, almost 15 years ago, I have been reading books and magazine and listening to podcasts and like, learning things that I didn't know and I didn't know until I needed them for 15 years.
Nelson, can you give me a fondest non-jujitsu childhood memory?
Oh, I knew this was coming. I prepared. So, German food. South of Chile, there's a lot of German immigrants. And then before the World War II jokes start in the comments, a lot of them came in the early 1900s. The south of Chile, the weather is very similar to the Bavaria region of Germany. So the Chilean government went there, offered free land in South America to anybody that wanted to go and settle that region. So there was this big immigration push, late 1800s, early 1900s. So if you live in Chile, like, everybody looks like me. If you drive far enough south, everybody looks like my wife. My wife has like German grandparents. So my family lived in the south of Chile. And then every so often for a special occasion, we will go get German food. And as a child, I was like, oh, this is like so different. This is so cool. We're eating German food. So anytime, like, schnitzel, kuchen, pork and sauerkraut, like all that stuff, like, just brings me back to, like, going place with my parents and getting, like, special treat. So where I live in Pennsylvania, there's the Pennsylvania Dutch influence is very big. There's like these like German immigrants that came over and like settled in Pennsylvania. They even have their own dialect. There's like a lot of like German traditions, Pennsylvania Dutch traditions in this area. So it makes me very happy that I live here and like, I have that connection now. My kids have like, German heritage on them as well. Both sides of my wife's family have lots of like German influence on them.
So let's see, future goals, Nelson.
Oh man. So I've been dealing with I had a very bad concussion at Master Worlds last year. The quarterfinals, I got spiked on my head. I remember like half the match. I managed to escape an armbar and come back on top, half unconscious somehow, and win the match. And so I took third. I had to like take myself out before the semifinals because of the concussion. I took their place. I had to go like physical therapy and occupational therapy for a month. I thought I was in the clear, and then like 6 weeks ago, one of my blue belts kicked me in the head and had like concussion symptoms for like 3 weeks. So I'm probably done competing for at least a year. I'm just trying to let my brain heal. So I had a bunch of competition goals this year. I went to the European, I went to the Masters International. I wanted to take another shot at Master Worlds, but like, it's okay. Like at the end of the day, like we were talking about before, it's like me winning a tournament at this stage like doesn't make me a better coach. I don't think it's gonna sell that many more geese. I think placing at Worlds last year and winning as many matches as I did, win the Opens and the American Nationals, was kind of like a little bit of validation. Over the years, I trained with a bunch of people like traveling, like people from Globetrotters that were at that level. Like we're doing well at Master Worlds, winning opens and stuff. And then like I wasn't competing at the time. They were like, give me a hard time. It's like, how come you're not competing, dude? Like you're so good. Like you wouldn't medal if you did this thing. And I was like, really? It's like, yeah, man. Like you should do Worlds. Like I think you do well. So when we opened the academy, I did it the first year. I fought this guy had just retired from the UFC, lost a close match, and then I was out for like an injury. Then came back, had like that big year last year, like everything clicked, and had like a beautiful run, and I got to do what I did, and like I got some validation. My wife has got won worlds in the lower belts. She has podium twice at Master Worlds. She's podium like Nogi. She won Nogi Worlds. She put on the European. So there was like this joke in my family that me and Hillary would go to tournaments, but she was the only one getting a medal. So like now I can be like, just one time, it's one time I got there. So I am very happy. I'm not saying I'll never compete again, but if I don't, I think I've accomplished plenty. I did a bunch of stuff when I was in the adult divisions. So there's a few items in the bucket list that I would like to check off eventually. Maybe I'll do it. Masters 2 now. I got, I think, another 2 years. So maybe I'll come back when I'm Masters 3 and my brain has healed a little bit. Hopefully, I can like string together a year or two without a concussion. Yeah, but right now, biggest goals is to grow my gym. We're gonna move into a bigger space by the end of the year. So I want to make sure we can support that. So we're like right where we need to be. I would like to get like a little bit of a buffer, if you will, like, have enough students. Like, I don't want to be stressing about it. We've been open for 4 years, keep making that room as tough as possible. And I think we're doing a good job about that. Then the business wise, we're kind of like in a little bit of a growth phase. We're in Verda Gear. We've been pushing the marketing a lot harder than we have in years before. And it's not the easiest time to be in the import business with the current political climate in the US. But yeah, we're working through it. Hillary has designed some really cool stuff. We have some very cool collaborations going. So there's like, I'm really excited about the stuff we currently have. And then there's a lot of stuff in the making that will be getting released before the end of the year. And we have a number in mind that's kind of been a goal for a long time. Then we should be able to hit like gross sales wise for the company that it'd be a pretty big deal for me. And we have another 6 months, but if the current trends hold, we should be able to hit it. So that's really exciting.
That's amazing, man. Do you guys sit down together and like sort of, because I'm thinking time management here with all these multiple businesses that you have. And again, you have children, and that involves a whole other thing as a father, I know, and a husband, I know what that entails too. But I couldn't imagine with all these, outside entrepreneurial efforts that you have and future goals of pushing these things. Are you doing time organization?
Google calendars, man. Like joint calendars are a must. And I probably got in trouble this morning because this was not in the calendar. I was like, yeah, I'm doing this thing. She's like, why is it in the calendar? Yeah, so Google Calendars, like a joint calendar, helps a lot. Last year, we bought one of those like calendars that has like every day of the year, so you see it at once. And then we did a lot more traveling last year than we did this year, so that really helped plan all the trips out. And then I just booked a bunch of stuff for with teaching in Europe again this summer. We started this tradition like the kids a little bit older, so they're actually gonna remember this stuff. So we're trying to bring the kids to Europe for one of the Globetrotter camps, or one or two, and then just travel in between. So we did like the Estonia camp last year, the beach camp, and then went to Riga, went to Warsaw, went to Austria, went to Germany, went to Switzerland, taught the last camp in Heidelberg, and then came home. This summer we are doing the Copenhagen camp. We're gonna fly into Bergen. We have friends from Globetrotters from there. So we're gonna hang out with those guys, train with those guys, go to Oslo. We're trying to figure out where we're gonna train in Oslo. So if anybody listening to the podcast wants to send us an invite, let me know. And then we're going to visit John Thomas in Gothenburg, and then we'll take the train to Copenhagen for the camp. I rented those like cargo bikes. It looks like a tricycle with a big box in the front. And like all the families have their kids on those. And like, you push your kids around. So we went there like 9 years for the last Copenhagen camp, and we didn't have kids yet. And I was like, oh man, like I want to come back one day with kids and just like, spend the week riding around. You're in Copenhagen, everybody has a bike. So I'm really, I told we kind of like talked about it. We're like, man, like our 7-year-old, the one that like walked through before, he's like giant. So I was like, hey, we're gonna do this. We gotta do it soon because I don't know how much longer it's gonna fit in that box. So yeah, this summer we'll teach in Copenhagen, and the only other thing we have in the calendar right now is the Mexico camp that we do. And there's like a few things we're doing like locally, like Jersey and Connecticut. Always like little seminars. I do all my U.S. seminars. We do like donation only, and all the money goes to Tap Cancer Out. So if anybody wants to do an event for tap cans, do an event where your gym gets to raise some money and I get to put you through some jiu-jitsu games, let me know. We can arrange that. And that's it, man. It's just having a patient wife is very important for these things to work.
So, Nelson, where can we get more information about you and everything that you're up to?
So my personal account is on Instagram. It's Inverted Gear Nelson. And then if you want to follow the academy, we post a lot of the games and stuff we do on Inverted Gear Academy. And the brand is just plain Inverted Gear.
Well, everyone, I'm your host, Adolfo Ferranda. Thanks for watching and listening again. Subscribe, like, and the whole thing. And Nelson, thank you so much for your time and everything that you've done for the community. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.